Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are undertaking a pretty massive mission.
We really are.
We're diving deep into perhaps the most influential, certainly the most misunderstood, and frankly, often terrifying figure in Western thought, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, most people, they know the image, right? The huge mustache, the famous line, God is dead, maybe some, vague link to teenage angst, or even worse, authoritarianism.
Exactly.
But to really get Nietzsche, you have to push past those cliches. You need to see the immense intellectual firepower, but also the profound personal suffering that really shaped his ideas.
Our goal here is to get beyond that surface level, that caricature, and really explore the full weight of his philosophy. And we have to start right at the core, I think, where a lot of the confusion begins.
Absolutely. God is dead.
That phrase. Because it isn't a shout of triumph, is it? It's not just him saying, I'm an atheist. It's something much deeper, a kind of devastating cultural diagnosis.
Precisely. And to feel the sheer terror packed into that phrase, you have to picture the scene he paints. It's in The Gay Science. He describes this busy, normal marketplace, people laughing, trading, completely secular, modern life.
Right, business as usual.
And into this scene boasts this figure, a wild-eyed man he calls the madman. And he's carrying a lit lantern in broad daylight screaming, I seek God, I seek God.
Which, of course, to the crowd they're mostly atheists themselves by this point, or at least think they are. It's just funny.
They mock him like he's a lunatic. Did he wander off? Maybe God's hiding. They treat it like a joke that anyone would still be seriously looking for God.
And that's the setup, isn't it, for the philosophical bombshell?
It is. The madman turns on this laughing crowd and just drops this horrific truth bomb.
Where is God? I'll tell you. We have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers.
Wow. So he's saying modern society itself, with its science, its reason, its focus on the empirical, we did it. We destroyed the very foundation of, traditional Christian morality. Exactly. But the crowd, they're kind of happy living without God, right? What they don't get, according to the madman, is the sheer scale of the earthquake they've triggered. They haven't built anything in its place.
There's no foundation left.
None. The madman cries out, we've unchained this earth from its sun. Without that divine framework, there's no objective good or evil anymore, no ultimate meaning handed down to us. We're just adrift in this infinite, cold, dark space.
So it's not victory, it's existential horror.
Pure horror. He's asking, okay, God's gone, so what now? What's the basis for our values? Where do they come from? That tension, that dizzying realization that we might have to create meaning ourselves, that's the engine driving everything else he writes.
And facing that abyss, that requires a certain kind of person, a certain kind of strength, which brings us to the man of self.
Yes, you absolutely have to understand the personal life, the personal wreckage, really, that forged a philosopher capable of staring into that void.
So let's rewind. Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche, born 1844, Rücken, Prussia. And his family background, completely immersed in the church.
Oh, totally. Both grandfathers were Lutheran ministers. His father, Karl Ludwig, a respected pastor himself. Religion was the air he breathed.
He was apparently a very serious, pious kid. They nicknamed him the Little Pastor because he'd read the Bible so intensely, even composed hymns. His path seemed totally set for the ministry.
It did, until he was 5. Yeah. And then his world just shattered. His father died, very young, only 36. After this agonizing year of suffering from something they called softening of the brain, probably a tumor, a slow, horrible decline.
And then just months later, his younger brother, Joseph, only 2 years old, died suddenly.
Imagine that. For this incredibly sensitive, intellectually sharp kid, what does that do? How does a loving, all-powerful God allow such pointless, brutal suffering, especially to his own devout servant? That's where the doubt starts, the deep intellectual doubt he could never quite shake.
And he's growing up in this house full of women, his mother, his sister, this sort of matriarchal fortress, as you said, all expecting him to follow in his father's footsteps. Huge pressure.
Immense pressure.
Yeah.
But the seeds were sown. By 1864, he's at university studying theology, yes, but also classical philology, the study of ancient texts. And he's reading Schopenhauer, finding this deeply pessimistic worldview, and his critical thinking is just taking off.
He pulls away from the faith.
He makes the break. Quietly, but definitively. He goes home for a holiday and refuses to take communion with his family. That was it. A complete severance. He wrote later that if you're truly a disciple of truth, you have to question everything, even if it costs you your family, your comfort.
So he ditches theology for philology, and he was brilliant at it, wasn't he?
Undeniably.
Yeah.
A true prodigy. He was offered a full professorship at the University of Basel in Switzerland when he was only 24, before he'd even finished his doctorate. I mean, that's unheard of.
He was set for life, really, a comfortable academic career, but clearly he was restless.
Deeply restless.
Huh.
He gets to Basel in 1869, but he's lonely. And he's already struggling with these awful migraines and stomach problems that would basically plague him forever.
Yeah.
And it's around this time he meets Richard Wagner.
Wagner, the rock star composer of the 19th century.
Absolutely. And for Nietzsche, initially, Wagner was like a revelation, a living genius. He saw Wagner as someone who could actually create a new mythology for Germany, something powerful and artistic to fill the spiritual hole left by Christianity, which he saw as dying.
He saw Wagner's music as embodying the Dionysian spirit, right? Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, that's crucial. His first big book, The Birth of Tragedy, comes out in 1872. And his argument basically is that the greatness of ancient Greek tragedy came from this fusion, this tension between two forces. There's the Apollonian that's order, form, reason, sculpture.
Okay.
And then there's the Dionysian that's chaos, intoxication, ecstasy, music, the raw affirmation of life, even its destructive side. And Nietzsche thought Wagner's operas were like a modern rebirth of this powerful Dionysian spirit fused with Apollonian form.
But the book didn't go over well with his academic colleagues.
Not at all. It was a scandal. They saw it as, wild philosophical speculation, completely unscholarly. It basically tanked his reputation in philology circles. It kind of concerned he wasn't cut out for conventional academia.
And the friendship with Wagner itself, that also crashed and burned. What happened there?
Well, a couple things. Wagner was apparently quite domineering, wanted Nietzsche almost as a propagandist for his own Bayreuth project. But the deeper issue, the philosophical break, came with Wagner's later work, especially the opera Parsifal.
What was wrong with Parsifal?
It went back to Christian themes, redemption, and crucially, pity. For Nietzsche, this was the ultimate betrayal. Wagner was retreating back into the very value system Nietzsche thought was life-denying.
Because pity embraced what Nietzsche called slave morality.
Exactly. This is a core idea. Nietzsche saw two basic types of morality. There's master morality, created by the strong, the noble. It values power, creativity, courage, ambition. Who says yes to life, warts and all. Then there's slave morality. Born from the resentment of the weak, the oppressed, it takes the values of the master's strength, pride, and calls them evil, and it elevates things like humility, kindness, and especially pity, calling them good. It's a morality born of weakness and saying no to life's power dynamics.
So by embracing Christian pity in Parsifal, Wagner was basically siding with this life-denying slave morality.
In Nietzsche's eyes, yes, a total betrayal of the Dionysian spirit. Plus, Nietzsche grew to despise Wagner's intense German nationalism and his virulent anti-Semitism. He called anti-Semitism the scabies of the heart. The break was total.
So he loses his academic standing, loses his great artistic idol, and his health is just getting worse.
Terrible. So bad he had to resign his professorship in 1879. He was only 34. And this kicks off the next phase, the nomadic philosopher.
This decade of incredible isolation, but also incredible productivity.
Absolutely. He's moving constantly. Cheap rooms in Italy, Switzerland, the French Riviera, trying to find places where his health could cope.
Yeah.
His eyesight was failing so badly he had to use one of those early typewriters, a Mulling-Hansen writing ball.
And yet, in this solitude and pain, he produces his greatest works. Thus spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, on the genealogy of morality. He's living that existential void he described.
He really is, daily. Physically, philosophically. He's confronting the implications of a godless world head on.
So what was his positive vision then? How do you live meaningfully in that void?
Well, this is where we get to concepts like the ubermensch, the overman. But maybe even before that, something really fundamental, amor fati.
Love of fate.
Yes, the love of one's fate. He reasoned that since life inevitably involves suffering, often immense suffering, the only way to truly affirm life, to say yes to it without resentment, is to be able to look at everything that has happened to you, everything, the good, the bad, the illness, the heartbreak, and not just accept it, but will it to have been exactly as it was, to love it.
To want nothing different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, as he put it.
Precisely. It's the ultimate stance against nihilism and bitterness. You embrace your destiny, including the suffering, as necessary.
Which makes his own personal tragedies, especially the Lou Salme affair, seem even more pointed.
It really does. So 1882, he's in Rome. He meets Lou Salome. She's only 21, but incredibly intelligent, charismatic, a Russian-German thinker. Nietzsche's 38, deeply lonely despite his philosophy of self-reliance, and he just falls for her completely.
He saw her as a potential disciple, an intellectual equal, maybe even a partner.
All of that. He desperately longed for connection. He actually proposed marriage through their mutual friend, Paul Ray.
And she said no.
She said no. But then she proposed this rather bizarre alternative, an intellectual trinity. The three of them, Nietzsche, Ray, and her, living and working together. A recipe for disaster, really.
And there's that famous photograph.
Oh, that picture. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Lou Salome is in a little cart, holding a whip, and Nietzsche and Paul Ray are harnessed to it like draft animals. It's just this perfect, tragic symbol of the philosopher of the will to power being, well, led by the nose by his own human needs and perhaps her manipulation.
And his sister, Elizabeth, didn't help matters.
No, she actively sabotaged it. Elizabeth was very conventional, possessive, intensely jealous. She saw Lou as this scandalous, immoral creature and did everything she could to break them up. Eventually, Lou and Ray left Nietzsche and later became a couple themselves.
Leaving Nietzsche utterly devastated, betrayed, alone again.
Completely heartbroken. But, it's arguably out of this personal catastrophe that his concept of the ubermensch gets its sharpest focus.
The overman or superman. Okay, let's be really clear here, because this concept gets twisted more than maybe any other.
Yes. It is absolutely crucial to state. The ubermensch has nothing to do with the master race. It is not about dominating other people. That's the Nazi distortion fueled by his sister.
So, if it's not about external domination, what is it?
It's about internal domination, self-overcoming. The ubermensch is the individual who has the strength, the spiritual, psychological strengths to face the death of God, face the collapse of old values, and create their own. They don't need external authorities or traditions to tell them how to live or what's meaningful.
They embrace their will to power.
Yes, but again, will to power isn't primarily about dominating others. It's the fundamental inner drive that all life has towards growth, towards overcoming obstacles, towards expressing its strength, towards self-mastery. The ubermensch harnesses this will to power to become the legislator of new values in a world where the old ones are dead.
It's about becoming who you are, creating yourself.
Exactly, taking responsibility for meaning itself. But even in his masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which preaches this idea through the prophet Zarathustra, it ends tragically, doesn't it?
It does. Zarathustra tries to teach humanity about the ubermensch, but they mostly mock him or misunderstand him. He fails, really, and returns to his solitude.
Which just mirrors Nietzsche's own profound loneliness, right?
Yeah.
Even at the peak of his creative powers, he couldn't find the connection he craved. It shows how incredibly hard it is to live up to the demands of his own philosophy. The philosopher of radical independence was crushed by isolation.
That tension, the demand for strength versus the human reality of vulnerability, it makes him feel very relevant today, I think. That struggle is real.
Absolutely. And perhaps that immense internal pressure, combined with his deteriorating physical health, led to the final catastrophic break, January 1889 in Turin, Italy.
He seemed to be in this strange state of euphoria almost, writing wild, unhinged letters to people, signing them Dionysus or the Crucified One.
Yes, the kind of ecstatic breakdown. And then the famous incident in the Piazza Carlo Alberto. He sees a cab driver savagely whipping a horse. Nietzsche runs out, throws his arms around the horse's neck, trying to protect it, and then just collapses sobbing.
And that was it. The breakdown was complete, irreversible.
His mind, arguably one of the most brilliant of the 19th century, was just gone. He was found ranting, playing the piano with his elbows, taken to a clinic in Basel.
The diagnosis was general paralysis, wasn't it? Usually thought to be tertiary syphilis, though there's still some debate.
That's the common diagnosis, yeah. He lived for another 11 years, but essentially in a state of mental twilight, cared for first by his mother and then after her death.
His sister, Elizabeth Förster Nietzsche.
Yes. And this is where the ultimate betrayal, the philosophical vandalism, truly begins. Elizabeth, who Nietzsche had fundamentally disagreed with, especially over her marriage to a prominent anti-Semite, she gained complete control over all his writings, his notebooks, everything.
And she set about curating his legacy.
Curating is putting it mildly. She systematically edited his letters, suppressed things she didn't like, even forged documents. Most significantly, she gathered up his unpublished, often fragmentary notes from his later years' notes. He himself hadn't organized or intended for publication in that form, and mashed them together to a book she titled The Will to Power.
A book which presented a very specific, distorted version of his ideas.
Exactly. She twisted his concepts, particularly the will to power and the ubermensch, stripping them of their philosophical nuance about self-mastery and reframing them to fit her own and her late husband's virulent German nationalist, authoritarian, and deeply anti-Semitic worldview.
But wait, how could that even work? If Nietzsche's core ideas are about radical individuality, overcoming herd mentality, despising nationalism and anti-Semitism, how could his work be so effectively hijacked?
That's a great question. And the answer lies partly in his style. He wrote in aphorisms and fragments, often using deliberately provocative, even violent language to attack what he saw as cultural weakness or decadence.
So easy to take out of context.
Extremely easy. Political movements, especially ones like the Nazis, they don't need a coherent philosophy. They just need powerful slogans, potent quotes they can rip out of context. Nietzsche's fragmented aphoristic style made his work uniquely vulnerable to that kind of selective quotation and abuse.
So Elizabeth could basically cherry-pick lines that sounded aggressive or elitist, ignore everything that contradicted her views,
and present him as a prophet of German supremacy. She even invited Hitler to visit the Nietzsche archives she ran in Weimar, posing for photos with him, literally associating Nietzsche's legacy with the Third Reich.
The irony is just staggering, given that Nietzsche couldn't stand her anti-Semitic husband, Bernhard Förster, broke off contact with her over it, and explicitly stated things like, the anti-Semites are the most stupid people imaginable.
It's breathtaking hypocrisy. And it meant that after World War II, Nietzsche's reputation was, understandably, toxic. He was seen as the philosopher of fascism.
Until scholars started the recovery effort.
Right. People like Walter Kaufmann, starting in the 1950s and 60s, did meticulous work. They exposed Elizabeth's forgeries, retranslated his works, contextualized the difficult passages, and painstakingly recovered the real Nietzsche from beneath the layers of distortion.
And that recovered Nietzsche, the actual philosopher, is the one who speaks so powerfully to us now, isn't he?
I think so. Because in a way, we are living in the world that the madmen in the marketplace prophesied. A world where many of the old certainties, religious, moral, political, feel shaky or have collapsed entirely, where the universe can feel cold and indifferent.
And Nietzsche confronts that head on. He forces you, the reader, to look into that void and ask, okay, what now? How do I live? How do I create meaning?
Which is why so many of his lines resonate today, almost like self-help mantras, even in business sometimes. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Or the imperative, become what you are.
He puts the responsibility squarely back on the individual.
Completely. In a world without God, or without universally accepted values handed down from above, we are responsible. Responsible for creating our values, for building our own spiritual foundations, for deciding what our lives will mean. It's terrifying, but also potentially liberating.
So the death of God, it really is a diagnosis of a condition we're still living with. And his prescription isn't easy answers, but a lifetime of struggle, of self-overcoming.
Yes. And crucially, a profound, hard-won love for this life, exactly as it is, with all its pain and absurdity.
Amor fati.
Amor fati. That's the ultimate test, maybe? Can you affirm your existence completely? Can you look back and say you'd will it all to happen again? Exactly the same way. Not just bear it, but love it. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. That's greatness for Nietzsche.
Friedrich Nietzsche died on August 25, 1900. He lived just long enough, fittingly perhaps, to be seen as the first real philosopher of the 20th century, and maybe the 21st too. If you're looking to start reading him, maybe try Twilight of the Idols or go back to the Gay Science.
Yeah, dive in. Wrestle with the questions. That's what he asks of us. That's how we grow.
Absolutely. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.